Right now, from what I've seen, the airplanes are not being built per spec and per requirement.
So your testimony is the 787 line and the 777, the 777 line are you think are not.
Well,
not safe.
they are doing stuff that increases the risk factors. Okay, when you increase the risk factors, it's not just one. You are doing stress concentrations. That those stress concentrations, like breaking a paper clip, you do it once or twice, it doesn't break, but it breaks at some time. As the plane gets older, all of these things that you took, you said it's not a safety issue, it becomes a safety issue. We are the eyes and ears of the public for the safety of the airplane. That's how I feel about our job. And so I have, when I see concerning information or concerning, let's say, production issues, then it is our responsibility to make sure that, if we are causing the airplane to have increased risk factors, our job is to eliminate those risk factors.
Are these planes safe?
Right now, I would not. It's like an earthquake. The big earthquake is coming, but when that hits the building that let's say if you're talking of a building, have to be prepared to accommodate that type of a, let's say, shakeup. It has to be built properly. Right now, from what I've seen, the airplanes are not being built per spec and per requirement. They are doing stuff that increases the risk factors. Okay, when you increase the risk factors, it's not just one. You are doing stress concentrations. That those stress concentrations, like breaking a paper clip, you do it once or twice, it doesn't break, but it breaks at some time. As the plane gets older, all of these things that you took. You said it's not a safety issue, it becomes a safety issue. We have made over 300 plus airplanes. We still don't know how to put the load and sell. What I mean by that, if you build in an airplane, build in a house, it's like, putting the foundation. We have made over 300 airplanes. We still changing our process, like build the foundation to put the airplanes. We are struggling with that because they have changed the process from stable to unstable situation. They're not building the same datums that we were building. So you're causing your own problem, but you don't want to admit it. Just force fit the problem, force fit the misaligned holes and everything else and move on. And that's what they have been doing. And that's what I have brought up to their attention. I told my boss that I said in the report, I said, we have made 300 plus airplanes. That should have been more than adequate for us to resolve these things. All the problems that we've had, we put Band-Aid over Band-Aid to resolve the problems, and Band-Aid over Band-Aid doesn't cover it. Maybe we need to consider some engineering fundamentals with a little bit of GD&T to figure out what the problem is. And right after that, he came back to my desk and he like I said, he made the threat. And then after that, he says, are you in or are you out?
Meaning what? Are you in and are you out with Boeing? Are you going to be a good citizen and keep your mouth shut? Was that the implication?
That's how I can interpret that. He would walk by me and he said, you better, then he said, I want you to write it in writing. Tell me, are you in or are you out?
Put it in writing whether or not you were going to...
I'm in or out, and what that means, are you going to just shut up?
Right.
That's all.
That would be in. If you wanted to be in, you needed to be quiet. You needed to stop this. Don't say anything more. Certainly don't tell the public.
That's how I interpreted it. But he told me to write it in writing.
reason my concern for that is back in 2012, Boeing started removing inspection operations off their jobs. So it left the mechanics to buy off their own work. So what we're seeing with the door plug blowout is what I've seen with the rest of the airplane, as far as jobs not being completed properly, inspection steps being removed, issues being ignored. My concerns are with the 737 and the 787, because those programs have really embraced the theory that quality is overhead and non-value added. So those two programs have really put a strong effort into removing quality from the process. When I first started working at Charleston, I was in charge with pushing back defects to our suppliers. And what that meant was I'd take a group of inspectors and actually go to the supplier and inspect their product before they sent it in. Well, I'd taken a team of 4 inspectors to Spirit Aerosystems to inspect the 41 section before they sent it to Charleston. And we found 300 defects. Some of them were significant that needed engineering intervention. When I returned to Charleston, my senior manager told me we had found too many defects and he was going to take the next trip. So the next trip he went on, he took 2 of my inspectors. And when they got back, they were given accolades for only finding 50 defects. So I pulled that inspector aside and I said, did Spirit really clean up their act that quick? That don't sound right. And she was mad. She said, no. Said the 2 inspectors were given 2 hours to inspect the whole 41 section and they were kicked off the airplane.
Boeing has a code of conduct that states, and I quote, "I will never retaliate against or punish anyone who speaks up to report a concern," end quote. And yet the whistleblowers that we have heard, including testifying before this committee, have reported a host of retaliatory behaviors, from reassignment to exclusion from key meeting to being sidelined and sidetracked in their careers, verbal harassment and threats, and even physical violence. After whistleblower John Barnett raised his concerns about missing parts, he reported that his supervisor called him 19 times in one day and 21 times another day. And when Barnett asked his supervisor about those calls, he was told, quote, "I'm going to push you until you break." He broke. When whistleblower Sam Mohawk raised concerns about Boeing's concealment of non-conforming parts, he was put in charge of completing corrective action investigations with an impossible deadline, and then threatened with formal discipline, including firing. He couldn't meet that deadline. When I hear about these experiences, I wonder whether Boeing really wants change. How can you reassure us that Boeing is going to, in fact, end this broken safety culture?
Senator, I'm going to start by assuring you that I listened to the whistleblowers that appeared at your hearing. Something went wrong. And I know the sincerity of their remarks.
Well, let me ask you a more specific...
And then with respect to our company, we do have a policy. I often cite and reward the people who bring issues forward, even if they have huge consequence on our company and our production levels, et cetera. My leadership team does that.